Hello and welcome to Global Review. I am Chakravarty. We bring to you weekly analysis of what has happened at the global stage. As always, let's have a look at the headlines first. Sri Lankan crisis deepens. President Sena to appoint new cabinet. China's first privately built space rocket fails. Russia, Germany and Turkey along with France to have new constitution for Syria at the Istanbul summit. Germany has received around 100 containers of ammunition, largest supply from the United States. India, Japan sign a bilateral currency swap deal worth $75 billion. China to launch Import Expo. China will build the first permanent airport in South Pole. After Pakistan, Argentina lands at IMF door, likely to get $56 billion loan. Prime Minister is already in Japan. The key developments in Indo-Pacific were discussed, several other issues of bilateral interest. That's what we are going to analyze in across the globe. The annual dialogue between India and Japan took place in Tokyo. Prime Minister spent a lot of time at the bilateral level with the Prime Minister Abe. Let's have a look at this report.
On October 29, 2018, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in Tokyo for the 13th India-Japan Annual Summit. The aim was to deepen strategic ties between the two countries. India-Japan partnership is the key to the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, that is AAGC, and Free and Open Indo-Pacific FOIP strategy. AAGC promotes maritime economic relations between Japan, India, Africa, Southeast Asia and Oceania towards development in health, pharmaceutical and agriculture. Taking a step towards this, the two countries signed the implementation arrangement for deeper cooperation between the Indian Navy and Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force. The summit also initiated a 2+2 dialogue to be launched between the foreign and defense ministers, and 6 agreements were signed including high-speed train, naval cooperation and a memorandum of cooperation between Kanagawa Prefecture and Ministry of Ayush. In their joint statement, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Abe noted the need to push for partnership in cyberspace, health, defense and oceans. Following this, Japanese investors announced a $2.5 billion investment towards India. India-Japan also signed a $75 billion currency swap agreement that will bring stability to foreign exchange and capital markets. This partnership merges India's Act East policy and Prime Minister Modi's 10 guiding principles for partnership in Africa with Japan's expanded partnership for quality infrastructure initiative and TICAD's 6th Nairobi Declaration in light of the upcoming G20 summit. The two countries will work towards establishing an Indian-Japan business platform and enhance people-to-people contact. Japan has been a significant contributor to India's socio-economic development. Addressing the Indian diaspora in Japan, Prime Minister Modi stressed on India's transformative role as it moves towards Industry 4.0 and the role of diaspora towards strengthening India-Japan relations.
The key of India-Japan relations is the way forward for several countries in Asia, particularly those who are grappling with mounting pressures in terms of how they protect the peace in the region. They are also looking forward for the Quad that came up with Australia and United States, balancing factors as they call it. Some of these issues we would be discussing with our guests in the studio. We are joined in here by Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakravarty from Observer Research Foundation and the eminent commentator Professor Singh from JNU. Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakravarty, my first question goes to you. how you look at this multifaceted partnership that we have evolved with Japan.
Well, it is a function of the changing global environment, and when a certain power rises, in this case China, of course, it does lead to natural balancing factors or balancing pressures or imperatives, and I think this is a result of that essentially. And of course, the rise, the fact that these are the three major economies in Asia,
yeah.
And as Prime Minister said, that if you're going to talk about the 21st century as the Asian century, and it has to include the interests of all parties, including India and Japan, and it cannot be left to one country to fashion any architecture. I think that is the essential message of this relationship, and that is why you see both countries reaching out to each other. The second point here, of course, is that both countries are also hedging in some ways, because I think we should not forget that a week before this visit, Prime Minister Abe was in China, where again you had a swap arrangement, which is of course a different issue why it was done, and I'll briefly explain, touch upon it. So I think you are seeing a bit of hedging, a bit of rebalancing, and all this thing happening at the same time, with America also in the picture and Australia. But on the swap arrangements, I think it is essentially a kind of a support regime for the exchange rate.
That's right, Professor Swaran Singh, this seems to be more a wholesome partnership in which you have strategic issues coming up on the table, technologies, there, 2+2 dialogue has emerged and has been captured now. The idea is to institutionalize it. There is also the arrangement for bringing in other actors within the Asian context. How you look at this dimension of our partnership with Japan?
Sachin, you said multifaceted. I think that's what explains the relationship at this stage. Roughly around 3 dozens of MOUs, agreements signed during the summit meeting. A whole range of areas where two countries are cooperating, whether it is security, defense, to modern technologies, to a whole lot of projects that Prime Minister Modi has introduced in India, smart cities, Startup India, Skill India, Clean India, all kinds of areas where Japan is a kind of an important partner now in terms of technology transfers. Some of them are moving slowly in terms of negotiations, others are already on the ground. We are also the recipient of enormous amount of investment from Japan. So I think fundamentally, as we always say, no major irritations between two countries compared to the other two legs of the triangle, where China, Japan are supposed to have difficulties and India, China are supposed to have difficulties. So for a long time initially, as we institutionalized head of government meeting annually, it was seen as driven primarily by concerns about China. Now I think that's where the fundamental difference can be noticed now, with both Indian Prime Minister's Wuhan visit in April this year, supposedly launching a reset in India-China relations, and Shinzo Abe's visit to China last week, which talked about shift from competition to cooperation. So in that sense, both leaders seem to be engaging, or you could even say warming up to Xi Jinping, which perhaps create a certain amount of autonomy in their relationship to explore.
Do you think that would bring India and China closer, maybe anchored by Japan?
I think, as Ambassador just mentioned, that partly Donald Trump's policies of pushing trade wars. So I would be cautious and say maybe this is tactical at this moment, that Xi Jinping is being nice to both China and Japan. But here lies opportunity for China and Japan to really resolve issues. India, China are trying to resolve issues. But fundamentally, as I was saying, autonomous drivers of India-Japan relations can now be noticed. And that is where the whole range of areas where India, Japan are cooperating, as I said, some of them still slow moving, but a whole range of, and that's why I said multifaceted is what defines the relationship at this stage, and they have enormous potential in that sense. Of course, we will talk about that.
Ambassador Chakravarty, taking this point further, what Professor Swaran Singh raised in terms of partnerships between China, Japan and India, would that have a sort of new contestations and configurations within the Asian context? Because Asia always allowed other actors to play and lead, but now the destinies are coming back to us to lead. Do you see that possibility?
Look, first of all, there are two drivers of all this. One is, of course, the geostrategic drivers of China's rise.
Yeah.
The other is, let us not forget, China is a major economic partner for both
That's
Japan and India.
Yeah.
And I don't think we want to sacrifice that relationship. It's a very important relationship, and China also understands that perfectly well. And I think that is why you see this swap agreements and all this. Now, it would be, I don't know whether China will change its policy and whether we can have a swap arrangement with China. But I believe that there are indications that we could even talk about a yuan sort of arrangement in terms of with China.
You want to say something quickly?
I think here is an important case where China, he mentioned, is an important player in how India and Japan are engaging, not just China, but also engaging themselves. And I want to underline the enormous learning that goes on inside China. The BRI project, which is the most ambitious project.
That's right, yeah.
They started as a unilateral program. Then last year, they turned it around and said consultations and multilateralism is most important.
Right.
And now the third stage, 2+1.
Yeah.
So same thing is being offered to India, that India, China could come together and launch third country projects. Same is offered to Japan, that Japan and China could come together and launch.
In Africa.
So in that sense, Chinese are also constantly learning how to make sure that they can maximize advantage.
On this point, we would have to stop for a break. Don't go away. There are many more important things coming up in the next component. Welcome back. In this section, we bring to you analysis on themes which are not in your newspaper columns. We call this Beyond the News. Today, we have picked up a theme which is extremely interesting for those of us who are observing how South Asia is evolving. It is Bangladesh's development model. Lot of extremely peculiar achievements are there in Bangladesh. Let's have a look at this report.
Earlier this month, Bangladesh held its 4th National Development Fair, inaugurated by Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Prime Minister Hasina announced the 10 special initiatives forming a bedrock for Bangladesh development, such as Visions 2021 and 2041 for establishing a middle-income country with sustainable economy, Bangabandhu satellite and Padma Bridge and Rupur nuclear power plant. In 1971, visionary leader Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman set the model for Bangladesh development, and his dream of a sonar Bangladesh as a country emerged as the world's second poorest nation. Since 2010, it has focused on consolidating economic growth, maintaining inflation at a moderate level, and attracted high foreign direct investment. High remittance inflows have further given a boost to human capital that has been the primary driver of the poverty alleviation. Between 1991 and 2010, poverty reduced from 44.2% to 18.5%, moving 20.5 million people out of poverty. Bangladesh has increased literacy rate to 72.9%, life expectancy is 72 years, GDP growth rate is at 7.86%, and exports of goods and services are worth $40 billion. The stimulus to Bangladesh's growth has come from its labor-intensive export-based garment industry, which has increased its exports from $0.12 billion in 1984-85 to $28.09 billion in 2015-16. Between 2003 to 2013, female employment in Bangladesh rose from 7 million to 17 million. Bangladesh's social development is linked to innovative, low-cost solutions such as microfinance programs which target women, large-scale social mobilization campaigns, old age allowance schemes that benefit 3.15 million people, and rural infrastructure development programs. Commerce and Industry Minister Suresh Prabhu proposed India and Bangladesh may consider signing a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, that is CEPA, underlining the potential of trade in jute, which is a natural and environment-friendly fiber. Bangladesh is also a part of the BIMSTEC and houses its secretariat.
With CEPA being a key proposal from the Indian side, the growth story of Bangladesh is becoming extremely interesting. With 18% of poverty that they have tried to bring down to, the efforts of enhancing exports to $40 billion and playing an important role in regional entities like BIMSTEC, Bangladesh has carved out a niche for itself. We have here Ambassador Pinak Ranjan Chakravarty, who served as India's High Commissioner in Dhaka. So, how do you look at this possibility of India-Bangladesh relations, but Bangladesh's own development model?
Well, on the economic front, I think there is no debate that Bangladesh has done very well. I mean, if you look from where it has come, and today it is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And there are two key drivers, as I would like to always, distill it to. One is of course microfinance, and in a larger sense the empowerment of women, bringing in women into the economy in a huge way in the garment industry, which is booming. And I think 80% of Bangladesh's exports today are based on this sort of labor-intensive garment industry. So empowerment of women has been a huge factor in boosting Bangladesh's economy. And one of the factors, of course, is that free girl-child education,
that's right.
the kind of the help, monetary help given to the parents of the girl, giving cycles to them. And it's an amazing sight if you visit some of the countryside in Bangladesh where all these girls are cycling to school, and it's a wonderful sight to see. And I think that has, and I think most governments in Bangladesh, and particularly in the last decade under the I would say a very skillful leadership of Prime Minister Hasina, that you have seen this remarkable
change,
sustained economic growth that has happened. And I would certainly credit the government of Bangladesh for creating the ambience for it.
Professor Swaran Singh, how is the larger geopolitics within the region when we see Bangladesh development model? Bangladesh has tried to balance both China and India in their dealings. They have also tried not to miss out on South Korea and Japan.
That's right.
So assistance and partnerships have flown in for Bangladesh. What is the secret of this?
I think I want to underline the fact that the development model, which is usually being hoisted in terms of statistics, in case of Bangladesh has enormous transformation achieved in
That's
socio
right.
cultural, and that sense is the very comprehensive development achieved, and women empowerment, gender mainstreaming are part of it. And I think that partly lies from the fact that their neighborly relationship has been fairly balanced as well. So, for instance, as you just mentioned, between China and India, they have been able to sustain a certain amount of equidistance without really taking sides. And that creates a certain amount of environment for them to continue peacefully with their policies inside. And I think enormous development has happened over a period of time. Primarily, if you have the lens of socio-cultural changes that have happened
That's right.
in that society. Now, obviously, they are seen as a developing country, much beyond developing country. The Economic and Social Council definition of $1,230 is now it is way beyond. It's $1,700 plus.
Middle income
so
economy.
Now I think there are a few challenges that move from here as you want to take the next step in their seventh 5-year plan, and that is not just how most nations who reached developing countries level have not been able to reach a developed countries level, which is what Bangladesh wants to reach by 2040, but also looking at social distribution of growth, environmental degradation issues, the whole lot of other challenges that are
climate change,
completely new challenges that now flow from here to continue with the development model which they are celebrating. And sort of they recently had the 4th fair in Bangladesh, and several other high commissions and their missions abroad did that kind of a showcasing of the development. I think now the next stage has enormously new challenges for Bangladesh, and I'm sure they are working on that direction also.
Ambassador Chakravarty, how you look at this Sonar Bangla, the concept and the idea, which is pretty close to what Thailand has been experiencing in terms of bottom-up strategy when Thaksin Shinawatra came up with this idea of one village, one product. Bangladesh is also trying to emulate a similar strategy of local empowerment, local connect. How you see the dimension of local empowerment there?
Well, Sonar Bangla comes from the Rabindranath Tagore song, which is of course their national anthem, Amar Sonar Bangla. So that is the Sonar Bangla basically means my golden Bengal. And I think basically it's about prosperity, it's about creating the right atmosphere for people to prosper. And I think Bangladesh has done fairly well. It has now graduated out of the LDC.
Yeah.
In fact, now we are faced with, I think, a problem of, because if you recall, we gave them duty-free privileges because they were an LDC. Now that I think, trade arrangement has to be reworked now. And that is why Minister Prabhu has been talking about a SEPA. Now, if you get into SEPA, then you have the other issue of labor movement and things like that.
Migration.
So it brings in those other issues which are politically more, I suppose, sensitive. But I think we have to now work on a new model with Bangladesh. We are doing it in terms of infrastructure development. The Padma Bridge will be a huge game changer when you will connect right through Bangladesh in a manner that has never been done before.
That's right.
So I think a lot of things are happening, energy sector cooperation, oil and oil sector, petroleum sector, all this is happening. And of course, there is BIMSTEC and Bay of Bengal waiting to be exploited.
Exactly. We would have to stop here and bring in Book of the Week. Today we have picked up this EXIM Bank's report on Act East, where they talk about Bangladesh, Myanmar cross-border cooperation with India. EXIM Bank, as usual, is full with numbers in terms of how partnerships across border, not only with Bangladesh, but connecting it with Myanmar and then bringing in Thailand would be advantageous. Ambassador Chakravarty, how you see a role of such publications which are trying to speed up the regional integration program through numbers and analysis?
Well, these are always useful, but I think implementation on the ground is something that we have to keep a very sharp eye on. Take, for example, the BBIN initiatives.
Yeah.
Then, of course, we have Myanmar in BIMSTEC. I think the Act East policy, I think everything points east. When you look at east, you have the northeast, developments in northeast, which is, I think, we need to speed up certainly if we want to integrate with our
Professor
east.
Swaran Singh, how you view?
agree. I think reports always give an opportunity to both assess and revisit. So it could be looking at what we have achieved so far and what kind of rectifications could be possible in the direction and momentum. So reports give you a kind of a fresh look at what you already are achieving on the ground. And talking of Act East and Northeast, I think again we started the Japan. Japan is emerging as a major player and partner again in India's Act East policy, including in India's Northeast.
That's right.
So congratulations on the report.
We would have to stop here. Keep on writing your comments and ideas. You are seeing my Twitter handle on your screens. Give us your comments. We would be back next week, same time. Thank you.